How to finally end the war with yourself. Henry David Thoreau said that the masses of men are living lives of quiet desperation. In the Buddhist tradition, the first noble truth is that all of life is conditioned by suffering. Now, this may sound like gloom and doom. It may sound pretty heavy to hear that, but if you just look at your own experience as a human being in this density, this realm of reality, it's quite apparent that there's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of limitation. People out there are having a lot of issues. And even within your own life, maybe you've become overwhelmed or inundated with worry, stress, anxiety, depression. Maybe you feel like you just can't let go of this sense of having to control everything. Maybe you just never feel good enough. Maybe you give in to impulses and compulsions and self-sabotage a lot. You can just never get any momentum in your life. Maybe it feels like your real purpose in life is always like dangling in front of you, but you can never really fully access it and really just take life, full throttle and live on your terms and create the freedom that you want. So whatever your unique version of the struggle or the suffering has been, I think we all have it, myself included. And I want you to know there is absolutely a solution for this. There is a way out, but that solution is going to feel counterintuitive. It may even feel irrational or even absurd at first when you start to implement it. The truth is that most of the self-help advice out there, and even in the New Age circles, the spiritual circles, it tends to be fairly superficial, and it's offering more band-aids rather than actual root level treatment for this issue. So I want to explore this on a deeper level with you. And instead of just telling you to go off and do your affirmations or just learn how to be more mindful in your life, all these things can be very useful, don't get me wrong. But if you really want to end the war with yourself, we have to go deep into the truth of your actual human experience and this reality you're living in. The truth shall set you free. And that's not some cliche or just trite, silly saying. It's actually real. That's actually true. When you see who you are accurately, and you see the reality you're living in through a clear lens that is truthful, you automatically start to experience more freedom, more openness. You start to let go of the struggle and the suffering. So really, and this is very, very simple, we don't need to overcomplicate this. It can sound complicated and abstract, but it's really not. The message that I have to share with you is very practical and it's very simple. And that's honestly why, ironically enough, it's often overlooked. Most people completely neglect this and bypass it because we've been deeply conditioned to believe that this has to be complicated, that we have to struggle in order to end our struggle. Kind of ironic, right? Have you been taught to believe that? That you have to constantly work on yourself and try so hard to fix, change, and improve your life and try to figure things out and analyze yourself and get better and try harder. Can you see how that whole mechanism of trying to improve yourself is in itself a recipe for more struggle and suffering? And it is quite ironic that the spiritual path, the self-improvement path, can in and of itself be the very thing that blocks us from experiencing the truth of who we are. I've seen it a lot. That used to be me too. I got my bachelor's degree in Buddhist studies, and I went to a school called Naropa University, and I meditated and I sat with the gurus and I listened to the Rinpoches and studied Tibetan Buddhism. And on an intellectual level, I loved this stuff. It really was finally, I feel like I've gotten something here that makes sense for me that I can grasp in my life. But in my heart of hearts and my direct experience, not much was really changing. I struggled with pretty profound depression, crippling anxiety, social anxiety. I was the kid growing up in school who was afraid to say anything. I just was literally invisible. Nobody even knew who I was, and I had zero self-worth and felt like my real sense of self was completely bottled up. And it caused despair. I felt terrible about things growing up. So I had to reinvent myself from the ground up, and I can share from my own experience that if I can do this, you can too. As cliche as that sounds, it's actually true that we all come from differing backgrounds, we all have different stories, but what is the common universal thread is that if you are a human being with awareness, you absolutely have the ability to do what I'm going to share with you here. So you may have lost that belief, you may have lost faith in yourself, and that can really add to the suffering you're experiencing. But my intention here is to help you get that back. I believe you wouldn't be listening to this right now if it wasn't meant to be. The universe has indeed brought you here to hear this exact message, which is really cool. It's serendipitous, right? So, what is the solution? How do you end the war with yourself? Let's dive into that in a little bit of depth. And keep in mind, this is a subject that I can explore from many different angles, and I can talk about this literally for hours. And at the same time, it's extremely simple. These are extremely actionable, practical things that you can implement into your daily life to really get to the root level of what causes suffering and to create more freedom and more openness, more abundance in your life. So, what do you do? How do you do this? Okay, so the first thing that you need to know about your human reality is that it's very much like a computer simulation. It's very much like a holographic illusion. And a lot of people have said this. There are many books about this. There are many spiritual teachings. Even in Buddhism, there's this concept of shunyata, or emptiness, that the phenomenal world is inherently empty of meaning. It's wide open. And that what human beings tend to do is layer meaning over what's happening in life. If things are intrinsically empty, we humans habitually put our own concepts, our own meaning over life in order for us to feel like we have some sort of recognition or familiarity, safety in the ground we're standing on and what reality is. The problem is that the meaning we are imparting to life oftentimes is coming from a distorted place. It's limiting. It feels bad. It's inaccurate. It's a distortion of the truth. And so the way I see it and what I've come to experience, like in my literal direct experience, living my life is that, and experiencing a much deeper level of freedom than I ever thought possible a few years back, is that if life is a computer simulation, our brain is very much like a supercomputer, and it is wired with a variety of different programs and files. And these programs have been installed in us largely from a very, very young age. So literally, like from the time, before you could even speak or form concepts in your mind, you were wired with certain beliefs and certain attitudes about life that you came to assume were just who you were, that formed your identity, right? And as the conceptual mind formed and language developed, these core ideologies and beliefs about life became more and more solid. Now, what happens in this computer simulation that we call reality is that the simulation you're living in right now looks very, very real. It looks very compelling. The illusion is like a magic trick. It feels like it's just solid, dense reality. This is just the way life is. This is just who I am. And if you really boil down the war with yourself, like what is it? What is this suffering? It's this solidified belief that this is just how life is. This is who I am. And there's like a set point to it that we just don't budge from. And we develop this stubbornness around our points of view, our perceptions, and our beliefs that gives us a sense of what I call pseudo-security, pseudo-safety in life. It's not real safety. It just gives us a kind of a false sense of familiarity with how things are. Now, in actual truth, this simulation you're living in is wide open. That's emptiness. That's like the wide open nature of reality itself. This simulation has literally no limits as a human being, but we impose limits on it based on what we think, what we feel, what we believe to be true, and our very perceptions of reality. So the programs that have been installed into this hardwiring of our brain cause our perceptions, and those perceptions feel real. They feel like this is just the way life is. Now, the way that you experience more freedom in your life is you start to, with your awareness, you start to step out of your normal thoughts and feelings, and you no longer just allow yourself to assume that your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and perceptions are you. Instead, you start to see them as automated programs that have been installed inside of this supercomputer called your brain that have given you a definition of what reality is and who you are. And if you want to change, like on a deep root level, you have to learn how to use your awareness and your imagination in new ways that deactivate and delete these old files and replace them with new ones. And in some senses, I'm not crazy about that languaging, because in my experience, what I found is that you're not really replacing them with new files. You're just experiencing the openness of who you are. That inside of you, there is what I would call a higher self, a divine intelligence, a higher form of awareness that we all have access to. You can call this whatever you want, just pure consciousness, God, energy, it doesn't matter. But it's there. It's there. And when you relinquish your attachment to who you think you are and what you believe to be true, you suspend that stubbornness around this is who I am and this is how life is. What you see naturally is this higher awareness start to arise within you. It comes from humility. It comes from a sincere desire to experience the openness of your reality. Okay? So you're not necessarily deleting, you are deleting those old files, but you're not necessarily like replacing them with new ones. You're just living in a more open experience where you see the truth of your situation, that this simulation you're living in is wide open. There are no real inherent limits in it. They are all self-imposed by these files, these programs that were installed in you from a young age. Now, a lot of people ask, and it's a great question, but it's one that requires some time to really go into. Why? Why were why were these programs installed to us? Why did that happen? Well, the way I see it is that you are an infinite being having a human experience, and you came here as a human being, as your exact character, your exact self, to have this fun, very adventurous experience of pretending like you're limited and then returning to your infinite nature. If you had to sum up the purpose of human life, that's really it. To go through different facets of feeling limited, feeling struggle, feeling hopeless, feeling like life is just overwhelming you, getting your butt kicked by life, basically, to finally waking up, remembering who you really are, and starting to experience in your moment-to-moment reality the truth of your actual nature, and making decisions from that place, forming new habits from that place, just living in a higher threshold of awareness. It's very, very accessible. So that's a big subject, but that's ultimately, in a nutshell, why we were why these programs were installed inside of us, because we wanted to play this fun game of feeling limited. I mean, if you think about it, when you were born, could you have been in a more helpless state? I mean, we're so fragile, we're so helpless. We utterly depend on the outside world from the moment of our birth. And from that initial just raw primordial experience of being born and having our sense of power, basically be based on what's happening outside of us, we form this imprint of believing that the power is out there, right? The power is outside of us. And then religion, God is outside of us. Politics, you got to depend on the government. You got to hope for your fair share of Social Security and Medicaid. Advertising, the media, you're never good enough, so therefore you need to buy my product. You can see like so many layers of this just instinctual impulse to externalize our power and give away who we really are to the outer world. So the process of transforming from the victim to the hero is one of bringing your awareness back inward and deeply questioning, deeply listening to yourself, deeply investigating, who am I really? Am I really my thoughts and feelings and beliefs, or is all of that stuff more or less just automated programs that have been installed inside of me? And if I'm not that stuff, well, what the heck am I? And when you start to really dive deeply into that question, that's when life actually gets really, really interesting. You no longer feel bored. You no longer feel like you're stuck in this mundane, just routinized existence where it's like, yep, basically living the same life as yesterday. I'm a version of my past right now, like whatever I did yesterday, whoever I was then, that's what I am today. When you actually start to explore the infinite mystery of your own nature, your own existence, this is when life gets very interesting. Now, I know all of this can sound abstract. It can sound a little esoteric. But the truth is that these are all things we should have learned at a very young age. But once again, the reason we didn't is the way I see it, at least, is this was strategically and intelligently planted inside of us to learn the exact opposite of this and to get indoctrinated with beliefs and attitudes and ways of living that are more about just survival and keeping kind of a lower level of reality where we have to use fear and willpower to get by, keeping that intact. But now that you're listening to this, consider this a confirmation that you are ready to evolve to a higher level, and you can. It starts with a willingness to turn your awareness inward and really examine those programs that were installed inside of you and really start to pull out your core identity from those programs. When you pull out your identity, you use your awareness in this way, you're separate from your thoughts and feelings. You see them as programs that are automated, that are habitual. That is the first step into a new way of being. That's actually what mindfulness is. If you look at the mindfulness traditions, mindfulness meditation, it's largely about the observer, developing this witness quality to your thoughts. You're no longer, just heavily immersed in the content of your thoughts as who you are. You're watching your thoughts, which assumes there's some sort of separation between you and your thoughts. Well, what is that? What is that space that is you watching these thoughts, right? It's very interesting. So that to me is the entry point into this newfound freedom. You can't be attached to your constant stories and automated programs and expect to end the war with yourself or have more freedom. It just doesn't work that way. So separate yourself, practice every day, meditate, separating out your awareness, your identity from your thoughts, from these automated programs that have been installed inside of you. So that's step one, and you can just practice that for 10 or 15 minutes a day, and that can feel like a very liberating, very relieving practice into itself. But from there, what I've discovered is that there's a more advanced and a more expedited, you could say, way to do this. I think it really starts with that mindfulness and awareness, though. But then what you can do is start using your imagination. And your imagination is so powerful. Like Neville Goddard says that your imagination is God. Literally God. There is no other God other than the human imagination. And if you really allow that perspective in, it's a total game changer, because you can start envisioning and imagining yourself to be whoever you want. But that starts by pulling your awareness out of these automated programs. You no longer buy into them so much. So whenever you feel afraid, whenever you feel worried or stressed out, or you just want to stuff your face with sugar or whatever it is, that there's something in you that is watching this happen now. There's an observer where you're no longer just bound by those mechanisms inside of you. Once you have a little bit of space, now we can use your imagination to start envisioning your ideal self. What is this compelling, high-level vision that you have for who you are in your life? So the fields of like neuroplasticity and epigenetics, they show us that our human physiology, our brain chemistry is not set in stone. And just through using our spiritual will, we can literally transform ourselves into whoever we want to be. We can deactivate those old automated programs that cause limitation and anxiety and that are the nature of the war that we're experiencing with ourselves. And we can instead, either whatever languaging you want to use, we can replace those files, or we can just dwell in a state of a more truthful existence, which is more openness, more freedom, more conscious, deliberate thinking and intention and action. And when you start to use your conscious mind in a way where you're actually thinking the thoughts that you want to think, and you're actually feeling the things that you want to feel, by virtue of using your imagination, it changes everything. What it does is it hardwires your subconscious mind, this deeper aspect to who you are, and your core identity shifts, your fundamental paradigm of reality shifts into what you really want it to be, which is a being of love, abundance, confidence, alignment, flow, connectivity, all of this stuff, right? Like all these qualities we long for. So I encourage you to just explore and experiment with these different ideas, but make them practical. You have to put this stuff into action. Like you can't think your way out of this war with yourself. That's just more of the war. That's just more programming. You have to go deeper into your awareness and your imagination, and also use your body, because your body is like a storehouse of all these automated programs. And as you start to use your awareness and your imagination, you can feel it going into your body and shifting sensations, shifting energies, feeling like old wounds and traumas and blocks in your body and your energy system clearing out by virtue of your attachment to the past relinquishing itself. So this is a big subject. And like I said, there are going to be many more videos on this channel exploring this. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more about this topic. But in my experience, this is the root level that you start to really do the deep healing. You start to really experience the freedom that you're looking for in this life. So like this video if it's resonated with you, share it. I'd love to get this out to the YouTube community more. And yeah, make sure you subscribe, and I'll hit that little bell notification so you get notified of future videos. And I'm going to be doing videos on this topic on a regular basis, because there's so much I could say, so much I've learned in my own experience. And I want this channel to be all about going deep to the root of how you become free in your life, how you really create the life that you want, how you allow this amazing ideal vision for yourself to actually take hold in the physical world. Even though you see evidence all around you that this is not possible, that limitation exists. Remember, this is a computer simulation, and this simulation has been designed by a higher intelligence to appear to be very limited. That's why you see wars, conflicts, hurricanes, people dying in tragedies. That's why you see programs in your own brain that are constantly cranking out anxiety and worry and despair. It's all part of the same simulation. When you learn how to deactivate those programs, you live in a new dimension of reality. You start to experience more love, more peace, more abundance, and you literally start to see the outer world in a totally new way. And from there, the outer world starts to shift in alignment with this new vision you're creating in your inner world. So your imagination is really the number one faculty that takes you there. So more to come on this. I hope this helps you. It starts to plant some seeds that give you some feelings of inspiration, of empowerment, and genuine hope and faith in your life, because you deserve it. You deserve it. So let me know if this resonates. Leave me a comment below, and I'll be in touch with you soon. Thanks.